Hey guys, here's something a little bit different. I thought I'd do a series of videos, as I've had quite a few comments suggesting that I should, about photography, which is another of my passions, but more specifically analog photography. So I'm obsessed with film cameras, I love photography, and I love these old cameras and all of the old designs that are out there. So before the digital world, which some of you may not remember, which is slightly tragic, there was something called film, and that was the staple medium on which you would take photographs. And the basic principle is that you have a film with a gelatin backing, which is basically impregnated with light sensitive chemicals, which when you expose them to a flash of light, as you do with the camera, you basically get a sort of chemical reaction, as these are photosensitive chemicals, and then you develop these with chemistry in the darkroom, and you bring out the images that were basically flashed onto them with your camera, if you like. And there is something quite miraculous about film which digital cannot capture. So I'm just going to basically go over a few of the reasons that I love film so much over digital as my sort of like preferred medium for shooting photographs. First of all is the look. Nothing else looks like film, and saying that is quite vague because there are so many different types of film and film emulsion out there. There are so many different types of look. So in a digital camera, what you have behind your shutter, just behind the lens, is a sensor, which is an electronic device which records the light that hits it. This is a fixed little piece of equipment, and it doesn't change, unlike if you were to use a film camera where the film can be interchanged every single time you finish a roll. And one of the many pluses of using film is that you have a lot of different looks. I have a couple rolls here. These are both black and white films because I do love shooting black and white, but I do shoot colour as well. But these are two completely different black and white films, both quite common and popular. This one is Ilford FP4. This is Kodak Tri-X. What that basically means is that you have a sort of a slower speed here. This is rated at 125 ISO, and this is rated at 400 ISO. So unlike with a digital camera where you can change the ISO electronically, which is the sensitivity of the medium to light, or the sensor to light, you can't do that on film. Once you set what you're going to shoot your film at the beginning of the roll, you have to keep shooting at the same ISO all the way throughout, or exposure index all the way throughout. And the reason for that being that you are processing the entire roll in chemicals, and if you were to change the sensitivity to light, or change the rating at which you rate that film, you're going to have to change the process, which you can't do frame by frame on a whole roll of film. So many people think this is a limitation. You really do get used to it, and it's not a limitation at all. One of the really cool things about film is that, unlike digital, most films, certainly negative films, black and white in particular, have a very, very high exposure, so it's tolerance to exposure. They have a very high latitude in terms of, you can, I think the figure is something like plus and minus 5 stops with black and white film, which is absolutely ridiculous. You couldn't get away with that on a digital camera. If you were overexposed on a digital camera, you are going to get white. All the highlights will be blown. If you overexpose on black and white film, your highlights aren't going to be blown. They're going to be in there. So if you're really clever in the darkroom, you can actually bring that detail out by dodging and burning. The other thing about film is the latitude of the shot, the amount of highlight detail and the amount of shadow detail that's captured in an image. With a film photograph, you're more likely to capture that shadow detail and that highlight detail as well as the sort of middle ground detail. And whereas with a digital camera, if you expose correctly for the middling range, then you're probably either going to lose detail in the highlights or in the shadows. Another thing that many digital photographers might find a little scary is that you can't see the image on a film camera, whereas you can, for example, with a digital camera, you can just take the picture and check on the back of the screen. You don't have a screen. I personally love that. I've gotten to a point now, and I think a lot of people can quite easily get to this point where you can be quite comfortable and confident that you've actually taken that picture on a film camera, so you don't have to worry that it went wrong. That's particularly true of certain types of camera, I think, because unlike say an SLR or a DSLR where you've got a mirror that flips up and blacks out the viewfinder for a moment, certain camera designs like this, which is a rangefinder, the camera doesn't ever black out, so when you take the image, you can still see it as the shutter's going off. So that kind of makes some sort of mental connection as you hear that sound, that you could see the image. And so yeah, I don't personally find it a problem that you can't check your LCD screen. I think there's a certain quality or a certain allure to taking a film photograph and not seeing the result until after you've had it developed. So yeah, that's really cool. Another thing I wanted to shed a bit of light on, as this is just an introductory video, is the development process. It really isn't half as difficult as people say. Developing black and white at home is really, really easy. You can get the chemistry online, readily available, and it really isn't that difficult to do. Developing colour negatives, C41 process is what it's called, is actually also really, really easy. You can get kits that allow you to do this. So long as you are accurate with times and temperatures, you get extremely consistent results, a lot better than what some of the labs, the photo labs, will offer you, where they try and skimp on using chemicals so that it doesn't cost them as much. Another sort of common process that's used is slide film, where you don't get negatives back but you get positives. You get these beautiful little sort of gem-like slides of your images. You hold them up to the light and you can see the photograph as it is in its real colour. That process is termed E6, an E6 chemical process. That is probably the hardest of all of them, but once again, I still don't think it was that hard. I did it myself in my bathroom, and it's really quite easy, again, so long as you follow the instructions and you hit the temperatures and the time on the head. So yeah, if people are thinking, oh my god, it's going to cost so much, in all honesty, the prices of these cameras, these beautiful film cameras, compared to the digital equivalents, is nominal. It's next to nothing. And if you factor in that, plus the cost of film, plus the cost of processing the film or buying the chemicals, it really isn't that expensive. The next stage, perhaps after you've developed your film and you've got your negatives back, is what are you going to do with those negatives? What do you want to do with those negatives? Do you want to scan them and share them with your friends on the internet, or do you want to have a physical print in your hand? There are a plethora of different options, one of which is to buy a film scanner. These are basically flatbed, most of them are flatbed scanner designs. They're not always that expensive either, with a sort of transparency unit along the top so it can shine light through the negative and scan the image out. Those are really not too expensive if you consider the prices of normal flatbed scanners, and they actually do function as normal flatbed scanners too, so you can sort of like kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, and buy one scanner. And then you can of course print digitally from the files that you get. You can scan the images and manipulate them in Photoshop if you wish, and then print those images. If you wish to be a bit more traditional, you can wet print, which is a darkroom process where you have an enlarger, which is basically a projector. You slot your film in, shine light through it onto photosensitive paper beneath, and then you can sort of manipulate the image as you like. You basically have a darkroom with a safe light, and you take the images out and you develop them in 3 trays and you start to see the image fade through. That's the case with black and white printing. This is really, really cool. If I'm honest with you, of all the different stages of processing film and shooting film photos, the hardest part for me to grasp was darkroom printing, and it took me a good year before I was really getting prints that I was happy with, if I'm honest. And that's a lot of trying and a lot of mistakes, and you know, but it was well worth it for me. There's something very organic about that process of handling the paper and getting your own physical print in your hand, and knowing that there were no computers and not very much electricity involved in the process. It's really quite a cool feeling. The look of a darkroom print in your hand is quite unlike anything else, particularly those black and white silver gelatin prints. They do look stunning. I mean, and you can manipulate it with your hand. You can sort of Photoshop with the light. You can create beams of light to burn. You can mask bits off to dodge them and make them lighter, and burn in bits with your hands with a beam of light. You're literally painting with the light to make it a bit darker. And it's a really creative process and well worth a try. Again, as with most of these things, the equipment is relatively cheap, and relative to the digital world anyway, and it's well worth a go. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. That was just my little introductory video. I'm hoping to every week now put out a video. You let me know what you think, let me know what you'd like me to do in these videos, but I'm hoping to basically I've got quite a little collection of cameras here over the last couple of years, and I was going to basically take every one of these that I deem worthy of a video and explain the design to you in subsequent videos, and what's great about it, what's not so great about it, what it's used for, what it's not used for, etc. So yeah, And I'm also going to go through the development process and the scanning process and the printing process perhaps at some point in the future. So do let me know, and hopefully see you in another FPS video in the near future. Peace out.